Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi here. Welcome to my YouTube channel tonight on this Thursday, June 21st. It is 3 minutes after the hour of 8 o'clock, and we've got a weekend getting closer and closer to the weekend, and we are going to be looking at that and a few other things that are going on in the upper atmosphere with regards to the long term, which looks like things are going to change a little bit in the overall pattern going into later next week and next weekend. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. We do have a bit of weather going on tonight, and we're going to, as we do every night, but in terms of rain, we've got flood watches that are up across parts of northwestern Virginia through central West Virginia, most of southern Ohio, and also some flood watches up for southern Wisconsin and parts of eastern Iowa and northernmost Illinois. Gotta see, what is that the dark green? It might be flash flood. Let's take a look. The dark green is a flash flood watch. Okay, so we want to make that distinction for parts of Montana, northern Idaho, and northwestern Washington. They have all these excessive heat warnings up for parts of the Southwest as temperatures are running up into the 100 to 110 degree range in some places. I happened to look at Las Vegas a little while ago, and they were, I think, 106 at the time. So let's see what they are right now. 111. They're cooking. And the dew point is 1, okay? 111 degrees with a dew point of 1. Gives you a relative humidity. Are you sitting down for this, folks? I have 2%. 2%. Amazing. And by the way, the heat index is actually 102. Because the air is so bone dry. There's also a nice southwest breeze at 17 miles an hour. So there's a shocker. You've got a heat index that with extreme heat like that actually it's actually making it feel cooler, which is pretty amazing. Now, severe weather tonight. By the way, in that salmon area that's in parts of southwestern Kentucky, western Tennessee, northern Mississippi is what's left of a severe thunderstorm watch, and we'll get the Storm Prediction Center's map up here. And tonight, that watch sits in an area of slight risk. You can see the area of marginal risk that extends to North Carolina and to southern Virginia. Also, small area of marginal risk in North Texas and northeastern New Mexico, and then on up through parts of the central and northern Rockies. So not a huge severe weather event here, but at least some of the rain that's showing up on the radars indicative of some the heavy downpours that are going to be causing some of the flash floods. Here's the Northeast Regional Radar as of 8 o'clock. And always remember, folks, when you're seeing the radars here, if you're watching this in replay later on, these radars are from just before 8 o'clock Eastern Time, so be sure to check your local National Weather Service forecast office at weather.gov to get the latest as far as any watches, warnings, and also what's going on with regards to current weather and local radar. So we do have some heavy showers and a couple of thunderstorms moving through eastern Virginia, but there's rain that is back over through much of the northern half of West Virginia. See if I can pull up the full U.S. radar here. I got it hidden somewhere. Yep, there it is. And here's the full U.S. radar view, so you can see the extent of all this, because we've got this second wave of low pressure that is sitting back in western Illinois, and there's an arm of rain that runs from West Virginia northwestward through Ohio and on up to just north of Chicago, back over into Wisconsin, and then to the south of that across Indiana and Illinois, there are some heavier showers and thunderstorms, and they extend southward down into western Tennessee, part of that severe weather area. Seeing a little bit of thunderstorm activity going on also across central Florida, and we've got some showers up in the northern Rockies, where we've got the flash flood watches up for that particular area. So kind of a busy night from the standpoint of rain, and that rain area is going to extend its way into the east. But you know, by the time it gets here, I'm not sure there's going to be a whole lot to it. And in fact, when we look at the Weather Prediction Center's 7-day rainfall forecast, so this takes us through next Thursday evening, the 2 to 4 inch rains, and I think a lot of this is going to be front end loaded in the mid-Atlantic states back into the Ohio Valley. This is what's going on now with the rainfall. Notice up my way when you get up into New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania into southern New England, we're looking at 7-day rainfall amounts of generally under 1.25 inches. The heavy rains also of 3-4 inches or more in parts of Kansas and eastern Nebraska, a little corner of northwestern Missouri, and then snakes on back up into western Nebraska and on up through parts of Wyoming. So again, this really reflects where the frontal boundary is, which is running from northern Virginia west-northwestward toward the Great Lakes in and around that particular surface low. We are going to take a look at where our friendly neighborhood models are taking us over the next several days. And we just want to give a shout out to Levi Cowan of Tropical Tidbits, whose maps we use, and we thank him very much for his generosity in letting us do that. So here's the low in the east. Now remember, the GFS is not showing actual radar echoes. It's showing more in terms of precipitable. It's showing precipitable rain amounts. The light green areas are generally under a 1/4 of an inch. So we're not talking about super heavy rain till you get to some of the darker greens. The warm front that is pinned to our south, we've got a high that's moving off the coast of Maine. That's going to create an onshore flow here on Friday, so we'll have clouds moving in. And that warm front is pretty far south down into southern Virginia, northern North Carolina. You can see that finger of the isobar kind of points out east-northeast from there, with a low center in central Illinois. And it's going to probably take all day Saturday for that warm front to move northward. So at least for my area, I'm thinking in terms of some on and off showers, not a continuous rain, but as long as the wind is coming in from off the ocean, we're probably going to be sitting in a lot of clouds and maybe even some patchy drizzle or light rain in a few places. And there might even be the odd heavier downpour. Transitioning over to Sunday, that's when we are going to have to wait for a second cold front to come through, as we've got this upper trough that's swinging around, and that might produce maybe a scattered thunderstorm or two late Sunday afternoon into Sunday night. Also notice Sunday night what could be an outbreak of some severe weather and heavy rains, certainly for parts of Kansas and into Nebraska. So this is where the WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, is concentrating that heavy rain area that we saw of 4 or 5 inches. The GFS colors would suggest certainly some rather extreme amounts on the order of 5 inches or more for those particular areas. And then in the east, as we move into early next week, as we get this upper trough swinging through, we've got this nice little high coming down from Canada, and that's a fairly decent shot of cool air for Monday night into Tuesday morning. I'll show you some of the temperatures here, and this is for 2 a.m. Tuesday morning, and you've got 40s down into northern West Virginia through a good chunk of Pennsylvania and much of New York State except the coast, and for New England down in the 40s. So that's fairly cool, of course. And then back into the 70s by day. You'll notice that 90s are where they're supposed to be across the southern part of the U.S. And as we move through next week, we're going to start see that warmer air begin to creep northward. Toward the end of next week, it should start to turn very warm and very humid. You can see some 90-degree numbers starting to pop up in parts of upstate New York and New England, and going into the weekend of next weekend, Saturday the 30th, and the 31st. I'm sorry, and then Sunday, July 1st, we're looking at the potential for temperatures getting up into the 90s. And the reason why this is going to happen is thanks to a bit of a pattern shift going on in the upper air. So I want to take you first to Monday. And there we go. Okay, so you've got the map up front and center there. So I'm going to actually switch to the paint box so that we can take a look at just exactly where we are going with all this. So here is the upper air view for early Monday morning, and we're still at this stage of the game. We've got that trough right here. This is what looks like is going to be the last trough to swing through the Northeast. We've seen a number of them through this past month. That is going to swing through, and once that does, unlike the others, instead of having something else rotating around and coming down a day or two, a couple of days behind it, we are going to see this upper trough pull out, and that is going to mean a change in the overall profile in the east. And in fact, when I bring you the jet stream, the upper air view now, I'm going to switch to later next week. So we get to Friday, and there's a big change here in terms of the structure of the upper air. And what happens is, as that upper trough pulls out, we are replacing that with a ridge in the east. And also at the same time, you've got this broad trough down in the west. So here's your the outline of your upper high from the Atlantic that builds back westward into the Ohio Valley and along the mid-Atlantic coast. The Canadian jet is westerly and lies just north of the New York State Connecticut border. So suddenly we're seeing a bit of a flattening out of the jet stream across Canada, and that's a bit of a change. Now, why is this all going on? Is there other things that are happening that really play into this? Now, the North Atlantic Oscillation, which we talk about a lot in the winter time when we're looking for some signs of blocking. Well, in the summertime, in the spring and in the winter time, it can mean colder air for the Northeast, provided that there are a few other factors in place. But instead, in the summertime, more often than not, you could wind up with the North Atlantic Oscillation being negative. In other words, there's some semblance of blocking that's going on, and we could see it here. There's a bit of an upper high that's building back from England and Ireland northwestward toward Iceland and Greenland. Well, at the same time, you also have a rather broad but strong enough trough come into the west. So you've got the trough in the west, and as a result, you get this east-west Atlantic ridge that builds into the eastern part of the United States. There's your upper high that's way out in the ocean, but there's probably another little H in here somewhere, and we'll draw that in. And here's your Canadian jet now, which is suddenly being pushed and forced northward because of the fact that you are getting that flat ridge to build in. Now, the question is, how long is that going to last? Because none of these things last forever, and up until now, at least over the last couple of months, every time we have seen a ridge pop up into the eastern part of the United States, we wind up seeing it last only for a day or two, and then it disappears. So going through next weekend and into the first week of July, you can see that that ridge actually strengthens. The western part of that ridge actually strengthens as we move into the first week of July and toward the 4th of July. So there now it appears certainly that there's going to be some sustained heat that begins next weekend and maybe carries us right through the first week of the month of July. Again, assuming that the models, as we get into the long range, are correct in this idea now of a trough in the western part of the United States and that ridge building in the east. So a marked change in the overall pattern, really, and we'll see how long it goes. So as long as that upper ridge is there, looks like we might be finally at a point, for you summertime weather lovers, we might be at a point where we are going to see some sustained heat developing, at least into the, not only just in the eastern part of the United States, but actually going back through the Midwest and the Ohio Valley and even back through the Plain States. This might allow maybe less in the way. There will be afternoon showers and thunderstorms that will pop up, but they're likely to be scattered in nature, and with the lack of any kind of shortwave running around or any kind of weak trough or upper low, renegade upper low that's sitting in there, you're probably going to see precipitation take a bit of a downswing as we move through the first week of July. This was, by the way, hat tip to one of our YouTube channel viewers, Blorox Cleach, who's been pointing this out for the last couple of days. You nailed it good. Very good call, and put it in your hat. You did. You done well. I was a little hesitant on that trend switch, but it does appear at this point that that's where we are going with all this. So some summertime weather coming, but we got to get through the first part of next week, and at least for my area, it's likely to actually be pretty nice into the middle part of next week once we get through whatever happens later Sunday night with the next cold front, and then we're going to have at least a couple of days of relatively cool air with low humidity. Humidity probably won't start to come up until late next week. I have to wait for that upper high really to start building in order to get the humidity pump going. But I'm not a big fan of sustained heat. But at least I got getting my pool cleaned up for use. So if that's the way it's going to be, I'm going to have some pool time to enjoy, which is a good thing. So let me say hi to everybody here. Welcome aboard. The summer solstice came and went, says Delvin, because now the sunsets get earlier and less daylight. Happens every year that way, isn't that right? Yep, summer solstice. We're on our way now downhill, but the summer temperature peaks don't happen until the last 2 weeks of July and the first week of August. So you'll be the lag time in the heating of the atmosphere. You're going to see the temperatures still have upside until we get to the end of July, beginning of August, and then they start to begin their long descent until we get to the beginning of February. Raina Barto, hello to you, and thank you for being here from St. Augustine Beach in Florida. I'm going to get there one of these days. Understand it's quite beautiful. Going to definitely put it on my list of places to go. Charles Patchulak from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Johnny Quest, 5 inches of rain in Western Virginia and more coming. You guys have been so incredibly hard. The rainfalls have been just incredible over the last 5 or 6 weeks. Insane. But if this upper ridge builds, it'll finally get rid of that frontal boundary, and you could actually start to see things dry out a little bit. Well deserved, although I think the damage is going to be done with all the insects that'll be running around. Let's see. Jason Schaefer, you're going to Dubai? You're concerned about how hot and dry Dubai is going to be in August? Well, what's 120? Yes, evening to Priscilla Mayu, Golden Twister 888. Nice to see you here. Green Fire, Doodlefingers 101, new on the board. Good evening to you. Scott Olson making it right on time. Dio Nankumar. Nice to see everybody here. Anonymous Howard. Thanks, by the way, for answering the guy who doesn't understand why I don't talk about the chemtrails. I get maybe they haven't gotten the memo. I'm not talking about chemtrails. Let's see. Anthony Orr, a couple of systems in the Eastern Pacific One has a better chance of development according to NHC. Odds are overly high, so they upped it to 40%. I know we're sitting at 20. Yeah, that's going to be an out to sea scenario, I think, for either or both systems. The trough right now, at least along the west coast, doesn't extend all the way down, at least far enough to make the tracks more northwest or northerly. And if with the development the way it is, it looks like we're seeing things resume their more, let's call it the classic tracks for those storms in the Pacific, which is to basically move out to the west. 3 weeks off and on Central Florida. 3 weeks of off and on Central Florida. Yeah, Doodle Fingers 101. You get the typical stuff that goes on there in the daytime with the occasional tropical system that gets involved. And by the way, speaking of the Atlantic tropics, it remains very, very quiet. Not a surprise. This is the time. This is usually a quiet time, even though technically it is hurricane season. It does tend to be quiet in most years in June, and at least through the first, let's say, 2/3 of the month of July. All right, folks. That pretty much covers it all as far as what's going on tonight. Thanks for being here. By the way, I just, as I mentioned, you can support my channel by using the link that's on the descriptor to this live stream or on the descriptor to this video for Amazon. The link is there, and if you do, we are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees by linking to Amazon and its affiliated sites. So if you shop there, you get your stuff at the great Amazon prices that they usually are. Amazon throws me back some coin, and everybody's happy, and it doesn't cost you a cent. And I appreciate it that those of you who have done that, and thank you very much. And let's see, the Joe and Joe tonight, the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Facebook is on schedule. I'm not sure if we're going to be going on at 8:50 or at 9:15. I got to check with him, but it'll be either one or the other. And then we will upload the show to YouTube, so that you can watch it later on tonight if you are not on Facebook. So this way you get to see it. And Joe will be here from time to time on my YouTube channel when I'm here live. When we've got some interesting weather to talk about, we'll get Mr. Rayo involved and his expertise on what's happening. And I think that's it. That pretty much covers it. So again, everybody have a great evening. Enjoy your Friday, which is coming up, and the weekend. I hope you've got plans, and we will definitely will see you tomorrow.